Well, hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 73 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Hey everybody, welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Today I am joined by, once again, he hasn't been on for a long time, my esteemed co-host Todd Pringnitz down in Iowa. Todd, how's it going?
Dude, I've been busy, man. We've been working our butts off in the field and on a lot of other things. And it's been this is the time of year where you got to get all that stuff done business wise, getting ready for this coming fall where we don't just hunt full time.
Right. So on.
We're trying to get our ducks in a row. But today we are so lucky to have Derrick from Sitka Gear on, and he recently sent me some samples, and I've been going through them with a fine-tooth comb, and I am so pumped to get out and test these suckers out this fall. But Chris, welcome to the show, my man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Well, hey, Chris, tell us a little bit about what you do for Sitka. I know that you're the Whitetail Product Manager would be your title, correct?
Correct, and the way we're set up is we've really broken our categories up at Sitka. We have whitetail, which is obviously the category I work on. We have waterfowl, we have big game, and then train travel work. So each of those groups has somebody leading the product, because really the way we approach the development of product is it has to be purpose built. So we won't just release the same product in big game or waterfowl as we might release in waterfowl. It's not like we just change the names. Every piece is purpose built. And we really make sure that the application and how people are using that is built into the product rather than just pumping out mass built product. We really specialize in the key activity that people are engaging in when they're hunting.
And I noticed, dude, just like all the little details are what I really get hung up on. I've worn so many different camos over the years and so many different brands. And just like what you said, you build it for the actual purpose. And that's really no different than any of the other outdoor companies that have been producing equipment outside of the hunting industry for all these years. And those were the products I grew up. I was a big skier in Michigan. So I, grew up wearing the North Face and Mountain Hardwear and Patagonia and some of these brands that nobody in the hunting industry knew of, and that those were the undergarments, and some of them I still wear to this day, Patagonia long underwear and stuff like that I've had for 20 years. But those were the companies that were producing really good quality stuff, and it didn't seem to enter the hunting industry that effectively until Sitka came along.
Yeah, I think from the way I understand it, when our founder, Jonathan Hart, started is, he was out, they may have been sheep hunting or they were big game hunting somewhere, and our roots are really in mountain sports. And the whole approach was taken on, just like you talked about with the way that the mountain sports industry approaches their products. We do the same for hunting. And then how do we take that knowledge into something and make fit for use product for the whitetail hunter? So that's really what I specialize on.
And dude, by the way, you've got the coolest title of any job I've ever heard. Whitetail Product Manager. That's pretty sweet.
I got lucky. I
kind of dig them, man. They're kind of my drug. So
I gotta say, I mean, I don't think that there's too many kids that grow up and say, I don't want to be the Whitetail Product Manager for an outdoor clothing company. That's pretty cool. Certainly they don't wake up in the morning and dream of being a car salesman. But hey, I'll take it. It's worked well. But the reason that I reached out to you, Chris, is because I got to thinking and wondering about how it was that I could better utilize the clothes that I had, and I've got a lot of Sitka stuff. But whatever the case, I guess what I was most curious about, and the reason that I reached out to you is I felt like a lot of people just throw on a pair of long underwear, a pair of jeans, something over top of it, maybe some cheap boots or whatever, and go out hunting. And really, from your standpoint, is there more to it than that? Is there a system that you guys have got some? Maybe it's not science behind, and maybe there is. But is there a system that you guys have developed that you found that works?
Well, there's no single system for that's going to work for one person that maybe works for the other. There are ways for you to be able to just use some rules of thumb to be able to help you be able to develop a system that works for you. We always say is cold is relative, people's body chemistries, how you sweat, or just your general being cold natured or warm natured can make a difference in how you perceive. I mean, somebody in Florida might think completely different from somebody in Iowa in the way that what they perceive as cold. But there's some ways that you can go about approaching building a system with regardless of what brand you use. Obviously, we put a lot of science. I mean, we're actually owned by Gore-Tex, so we have a lot of research facilities available at our disposal. I mean, we have a climate chamber. I mean, we can lower it down to -50 and make the winds go 30 miles an hour if we want to.
I would be in there
or we can make it at 150.
It'd be like acclimatizing. It'd be like acclimatizing for hunting season.
Yeah, it will definitely. If you've ever been in there and then you've tried to take notes with a frozen pen, you realize real quickly that it's time to use a pencil. So
I love it, man. That's so cool.
But if I were to lay it out and just teaching people to how to develop a system, I break it down to really three things. And that really helps simplify it for people, because it can be there's a lot out there, and it can be really confusing, and there's a lot of people that make a lot of claims on what the product does. But if you typically follow these 3 points, you'll be able to help yourself, at least from a whitetail perspective, have a better experience. So the way I lay it out is, number one is you want to set your foundation for moisture management. The second thing I tell people to do is keep it minimalist for the commute, so how you're going to travel to the stand. And then the third is add insulation or outerwear for the static sit based on the environmental conditions. So I'll break down each of those 3 points for you, and maybe that will help people to have a better experience in the woods, which is all we want to do. I mean, when you're really cold, I'm sure you guys have been there. We've all been there. When it's cold and your fingers hurt, your feet hurt, you can't really concentrate. You're not going to really do a good job. I mean, there's been times where I've not layered properly, and all I could do was just lean my head against the tree and just be like, gosh, I wish the sun would set, and so I could climb down, and that's not where you want to be, because you're not set up for success at that point. Would you guys agree?
Oh God, dude, I can't tell you how many hunts I've left the tree too early during the rut or whatever. Late mornings, I always struggle with the worst because I sweat extremely bad. So my feet get wet, my feet get cold almost in a lot of cases before it even gets daylight. You're sneaking into some of these vast back areas. But what I have noticed is when you're cold, you're not attentive. And so that's when you'll make mistakes where, like, you're not looking around as you should be. You get lazy, kind of, so to speak, because you're just trying to stay warm. So that's where your focus goes instead of on hunting, which is what you should be doing. And I can't tell you how many guys, we're all getting there, where we're all sitting on our phones or doing something we shouldn't be doing when we're out hunting. And that's, of course, that's just when it happens. It always does. So, yeah, if you're warm, you're far more attentive, and you're more likely to stay longer. And that just is statistically, you can't beat being in the woods. I mean, you got to be in the right spot and all that. But the longer you can stay, the earlier you can get out there, the better. And all the way. I mean, it really hasn't changed for me over the years, from skiing to backpacking to hunting. I've always done a 3-layer system, a base layer, which is usually a long sleeve shirt. And if it's warmer, then a t-shirt of some sort that has a good wicking material. Your mid layer is either a fleece or a sweatshirt of some sort, or as it gets colder, it can be a down coat. And then I usually have 2 different outer layers to play with through the season. So between let's say 65 degrees, 70 degrees in the Midwest down to 20 below zero, a combination of those different layers can get you through. And the biggest secret I've had to staying warm, my upper body anyway, is packing my layers in. I usually only wear my base layer in because I'm I'm a hog. I sweat like a pig. So by the time I get up my stand, cool down, and then that's when I put my other layers on. And just doing that alone, I think if most guys would just pack their clothes in, they would probably be shocked at how much warmer they stay because they haven't gotten sweated up on the inside.
Yeah, that makes a really big difference. When you're going in to the woods, like I would just, it could be -15, and I'm going to have a fairly light layer on. Like I might have a lightweight base layer on, and then like maybe if it's really cold, a midweight insulation piece. But yeah, I'm not going to wear that outerwear piece in, because if you've ever been climbing a stand and you see that drip of sweat coming off your nose as you're getting halfway up the tree, or you're climbing in and you're moving around and getting things ready, even if you're wearing Sitka gear, it's going to take a little time for that moisture to move out of the system. And if you're wearing the wrong thing, the moisture will never move out of the system. And so one of the things we say is the most critical layer is next to skin. You want to set that foundation for managing the moisture. So a lot of people don't know this, but you have the lightweight base layers, and your approach, what you're talking about, like it could be synthetic, it could be wool. The advantage to the synthetic is it's going to move the moisture away from your body. The advantage with some of the wool is it's going to be able to, if it does get wet, it's going to retain some of that clo value, or clo value means insulating value, even when it's wet. And so you can, based off your preference, if you start with a good moisture management foundation, that's going to help you, because you're going to generate sweat. Everybody is at some point during the commute to the stand or climbing up or whenever that is. And you want to be able to move that moisture away from your body.
Part of it kind of for me is over the years, as I got to become a better hunter and did a lot more aggressive moves, like where you're running and gunning, you're doing this, that, and the other. And I just got to the point where I was like, I'd rather pack a couple extra pounds and have to do a little bit more tree stand maneuvering, getting my clothes on and whatnot. Once you're up and you're in those comfortable, warm, dry clothes, it's like, oh, dude, it's so worth it. It's worth it at that moment, and you just got to make yourself do it, because it's going to end up letting you enjoy hunting more. To be honest, there's nothing worse than sitting and freezing out in the outdoors. And no matter what you do, there was times in the hunting season where you underestimate or you overestimate, what you should be bringing out there. But one of the other big tips I can give to anybody out there who especially travels long distances, there's nothing worse than getting out of your truck and it's freezing cold and blowing 20 and you know that if you wear a stocking cap that you're going to be sweating by the time you get to your stand. But you're just like, oh, the thought of getting out of my truck and not having a cap on, like, it kills me. So what I've started doing is, and it might sound stupid, but it works great for me. I just wear a ball cap, put my stocking hat over top of it. Then during the walk, as I start to warm up, and inevitably about 200 yards from the truck, you start to warm up, even though you didn't want to not wear your hat. And then you just take your hat off, put it in your pocket, and that's where cargo pants pockets. I'm gonna get into some of my things I really dug about your equipment, but you got to have cargo pants pockets, and that's for carrying gloves and hats and other pieces of small attire or apparel, so that you can get in and out of your stuff, out of your stands. Be able to strip a little bit as you go if you need to, because trust me, it's worth it taking that little time. And so that the hat trick, there you go.
That's a great trick. And then, we have a guy that I work with. He's my counterpart, but John Barklow, he's the big game product manager, and he does something called the rewarming drill. He used to train special forces, so he was the guy that would actually teach special forces for the military how to survive in mountain conditions, and they do a drill that's called the rewarming drill. So basically, it sounds crazy, and it truly is an awful experience. But you jump into a cold river in the middle of winter with your clothes on, and then rather than getting out, a lot of people would just go ahead and build a fire. He actually teaches you to walk yourself dry. So you can do that if you've got the right base layers on. That you can actually be jumping into a river. You'll be walking over. You'll be numb at the beginning, but you can actually walk yourself and move. That you'll actually act like a dryer and dry out your clothes as you're moving. Obviously, that doesn't apply to the whitetailer, but it does show what wearing the right system does.
Hey, I tell you one guy who could take advantage of that, Dan Infalt. He loves to go swimming and get dirty and wet. That is the perfect system for Mr. Infalt. Sorry, Dan.
Well, if either of you want to volunteer, we'll set it up this winter.
Oh, man. Yeah, those Special Forces guys are crazy. So hopefully we won't have to go through that. But, Jason, what did you have that you wanted to talk with Chris about?
Well, I guess what I wanted to find out was, specifically, and you sort of started to get there, specifically, what process is it that you go through, whether it's well, actually, let me lay out a scenario for you if that works better. I hunt a lot of hill country here in southwestern Wisconsin, and I might have let's call it a mile and 2 mile hike back into wherever it is that I'm going to sit. So I've got my bow, I've got my pack, I've got my my camera gear, I've got the kitchen sink, and anything, because stuff does happen. So I this last year when I started hunting public land, I started to pack a few more things just in the first aid, I guess, department, if you will. So that took up a little more room. But anyway, we hunt here starting around September the 15th, and I'm finding that no matter what, I mean, I had some hunts where I wore my my boots and my
I thought you were going to say your birthday suit.
Well, close. My underwear and a t-shirt, and strapped everything else on just to keep from being a sloppy, wet mess by the time I got to the top of the hill, because inevitably you're never parking at the bottom of the hill, right? So I'm just curious, how is it that you would say that your system could be best utilized in that type of scenario?
Yeah, if it was going to be, I'm assuming, was it cold in that it was an actual cold period of time, correct?
No, I mean it was horribly warm, and that's the problem, is it was just so warm, and I was excited to see what you sent us, and I'm hoping that addresses those concerns. So it's really, in that particular case, not really about layering, is it?
Well, it's whether it's one layer or 3 layers, depending on the temperature. It's all about layering, but it's the lack of in that situation. So we build systems for different environments, and what you're describing would be perfect for what we call the ESW. That's something new coming out there, but it stands for Early Season Whitetail. And in that case, I would walk in with the ESW pant on, using the ESW shirt, trying to keep it as minimalist. If you thought as the sun started to set, it was going to get colder, you're doing exactly what you should be doing and packing in and outer layer. So bringing something like a mid-layer insulation jacket to put on as it gets colder, or a bib if it's going to be hot in the middle of the day. But you want to build the system for the environment you're going to be hunting. There's certain people that maybe only hunt in one place all season. They're not a traveler, and those hunters maybe can build just have one system. If you're a traveling hunter like you are, let's say you're going to hunt anywhere from, you could go to Kentucky, you could go to Alabama, you could go to Iowa, you could go to Wisconsin. You might have to have multiple systems for that time of year, and where you're going to be hunting. But the key is to be focusing on where you're going to be hunting and building the right system for yourself.
Dude, Jason, you know what I started doing in the early season when you're talking? Because it's down here in October, it's hot in Iowa, and sometimes it's up to 80 degrees. I just have started
staying
depending
home.
Yeah, pretty much. Go swimming. Go swimming down at the creek and have a beer. I start just packing in an extra shirt inside of a gallon Ziploc bag. Because usually by the time I get in those stands, whether I'm wearing a t-shirt or a long sleeve t-shirt or a long sleeve underlayer, once I get up in my stand, I take my pack off, and where you've had your pack on your lower back, your whole back is soaking wet with sweat. So what I generally do is I'll kind of cool down. I'll take my shirt off and literally be standing up in my tree stand with my harness on, of course, with my t-shirt, just completely bare it on the top, and just like literally let yourself dry out for like even a minute. It makes a huge difference. Take your sweaty t-shirt, put it inside the plastic bag, take your new one out, or your underlayer. Usually like that's when I'll switch from a t-shirt to a long underwear, or kind of like your elevated to undershirt, or what was it? The ESW shirt. But something just really lightweight, but just take that wet layer off, put it inside of a plastic bag, and dude, you're already not going to be scent free. So the way I look at it is I might as well be comfortable, but at least by having your large Ziploc bag, when you put your shirt in there, you at least don't have a soaking wet human scent bomb in your pack. And then over time, as you're doing that over and over, your pack will just start having that residual smell of that nasty sweat. But I don't know, a Ziploc bag inside of a backpack doesn't really make that much noise so long as it's, inside of the pack when you're doing your maneuvering with it.
Sure. So
another thing is we use, so on the synthetic base layers, they'll be treated with polygene, which is that is an antimicrobial treatment. It's a natural occurring silver salt, and the way that it's processed actually helps control the scent. Yes, on synthetic layers. A lot of people don't think of this too, is taking a lightweight wool layer. Most people think wool, that's not for early season. But if you take a lightweight wool layer, that actually has a natural odor resistance to it. And then also the thing about wool is that it is naturally odor resistant. It doesn't actually build up a smell. So in the summertime, when wool gets a little bit moist, it will actually help keep you cool. And then in the summertime or in the wintertime, it actually helps keep you a little warm. So that's one of the great things. So we have a lightweight wool, merino wool, that's nylon core spun, so it's extra durable. So one of the issues you'll face with wool in general is sometimes it stretches and keeps going. But sure, because of that nylon core spun merino wool, that nylon, it's almost, think of it like a nylon core, will help that recover back to where it's originally supposed to be, so it doesn't keep going. So you're not going to start out with like an extra small or a medium shirt, for example, and then all of a sudden you got like a double extra large by the end of the day.
Okay. Well, I'll be your test bed for the sweat, dude, because I am the sweatiest bugger on earth. I'm telling you this much. So if it helps me, it will help anyone from that regard. And then Jason's so cool. He's just like ice.
Right. So I guess moving on from the extreme, elements that we're going to face here at the start of the deer season, the middle of the season can become almost as challenging as the late season or later in the season, all the way to late season, you might be starting out in, 30 degrees in that initial walk to your stand. I guess how do you properly layer for that type of hunt?
And some of what we talked about earlier is if you're talking about going in the morning, in that situation where you're talking about 30 degrees in the morning, that might be where you think you actually need to put a whole bunch on right when you go out. In actuality, you need to go out, keep it minimalist for the commute, get up in your stand, cool down, add your layers. Versus the afternoon, at that time of year, you might go out and it might be warm, and then it's going to get cold as the sun sets. And in both those situations, you want to go in with actually the base set up, like your lighter layers, and then add insulation for the static sit session, whether it be 15 minutes after you get up in the morning and you started to cool down, or if it's 3 hours into the sit for the afternoon. That can make, or if you're doing it all day, because a lot of time that's during the rut. So that's really one of the key pieces that when you go in, whether it's morning or evening at that time of year, you're actually going to go in with a little bit fewer layers on, and then making sure you have the right layers. So the one key thing I would say is don't go in with cotton ever. If
right.
There's anything a lot of people just, they'll take, for example, there was a guy that was hunting with one of the guys on our ambassador teams, Donnie Wilson. He was booking a hunt with him. And this gentleman had the Stratus, which is one of the samples that you guys have, which is an hourly layer piece that you would add. That's a wind stopper, a gore wind stopper piece. But he walked into the stand in the morning wearing cotton under it. So he had a pair of jeans on, and he threw this on, and he came back complaining that he was cold. And what had happened is he went out wearing cotton, started to sweat like you talked about, and then he went into the static sit session. Yep. And even though that wind stopper was moving moisture, the fact that that cotton's going to hold it, his core body could never warm up. So just an example, like I can remember when I was really young, like a teenager hunting, and this is in Alabama, and we'd have 18 or 15 degree days was about as cold as it ever got. And I would be wearing, at that time in my life, because this is 20 years ago, I had all cotton layers on. And I can remember sitting and just freezing in 18 degree weather. And then now I'll go to Canada and Alberta and be hunting, and it'd be negative 15. And I'm way more comfortable than I was when it was 15 degrees. Yeah. And that's a 30 degree difference. And that's all because of the systems that I'm wearing.
Yeah. If you're starting with a wet base layer, you might as well, you're throwing away all of your insulation properties, because you're going to just always have that chill with that wet layer against your skin. Jason, do you get cold?
Yeah, often. I guess.
Do you wear down at all, like during the wintertime? If you get freezing cold, do you wear down?
No.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this much right now. I'll save everybody a whole lot of time. If you get cold in a tree stand or a ground blind at any particular point, and your mid layer, which is your in between you got your base layer on, it's real thin, and you're only wearing like a fleece coat, and Sitka has probably dozens of different options for the mid layers, and one of them I know is down. If you get cold, get a down coat, and that as your mid layer, a thin down coat will do more than you can imagine. And I prefer a hooded version, just because then as your head gets cold, you also have a hood. But down is such a insulator. It puts everything else to shame. And there's a reason why all these mountaineers have been wearing it for all these years up in the mountains. And these guys aren't just going hunting. They're out there and having to survive in the worst conditions on earth. And down is such a killer insulator, and it's so packable. It's extremely lightweight. It packs down to nothing. It's not real resistant to moisture and things like that. But as a mid layer, like if you get cold, just you can save yourself a lot of time. Get yourself a down. It doesn't need to be real thick. I like a kind of a thinner one. Chris, what is your like thin layer down that you guys recommend?
Well, actually, I mean, we use a Prima down, so it's a synthetic down blend in our incinerator jacket, which is. So here's the thing about down. I agree with you and I disagree with you on both in the way that down's used. So down is absolutely a wonderful insulator until it gets wet.
Sure.
And if down wets out, it loses all of its glow or its insulating value. So in that particular product, we use down, and down has its place. You just have to know where you're using and how you're using it. And we also use a water resistant down blended with Primaloft to make a better product. So that's one of the things that when we take a look at down and how we're using it. So you just have to be careful with down, because as soon as down wets out, if you've ever taken down and put it in a jar, just out of if you were to take it out of a pillow, or if you were into cutting up a $200 jacket and then you shake that down, you'll see it just goes flat as can be. So that's one of the pitfalls of down. Whereas in the mountaineering environments you're talking about, that's a lot of snow. And it's typically pretty dry environments.
Well, we don't like to hunt the rain, dude. Come on, man. I use mine for a mid layer, whether I'm in a ground blind or in a tree stand. But absolutely, if it's pouring down rain, I'm probably not wearing my down because it's probably not going to be that cold. But late season, man, it is money with. And by comparison, I have an older wool jacket, and the thing is crazy warm, but it weighs about 10 pounds, and it's like you might as well pack a sleeping mat and a sleeping bag for the size, and it's old school technology. It's extremely warm, but I don't have room to carry big clothes. So the packability of everything is so important, and you guys have all that stuff figured out in your product line. But yeah, the Celsius MIDI is so that's the reason it's named the MIDI, is it's designed as a mid layer. And it's perfect for packing away. I keep it in my toolbox all year, whether it's earlier in the season and it's going to get cold, or if it's late season, that piece packs away and I keep it in and wear it from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, because it is my mid-layer insulation piece. And that's the jacket that I use for my lettering item, and I use it just like you're talking about.
Let me ask a question that has been on my mind just recently, and it's not so much pertaining to the clothing so much overall as it is just the comfortability of the clothes, and that is how important is the way that the clothes fit you to keeping warm?
It does make a difference. So if you're compacting your insulation, for example, that would be an issue. So making sure that, and we build our systems. That's one of the things is when you're trying on like maybe an outerwear piece, if you're going to be layering under it, you don't want it to be too tight. So one of the things you want to do is look for fits that are maybe, like when it comes to base layers, those are a performance fit. They're going to fit next to the skin, versus where they're going to be more of a relaxed fit as you go out. So as you're wearing that layer over other items, that you have enough room inside of there, and ultimately you want to build how that fit is built into a garment, so it's not getting in the way of, say, bowstring clearance or getting in the way of when you're moving. So you really have to think about that when you're designing a product, is how somebody's going to be using it and how they're going to be layering under it, to make sure that it's not interfering. The best thing for apparel, the way I look at it, is you almost don't want to know. I mean, you want to know you don't want to be paying attention to that when you're actually in the hunt. It should be performing to the point where you just add it on and then you go about doing what you're doing. And the key is to not have it be in the way. Another thing, another point, when we're taking a look at, we all invest a lot into our bows. We invest a lot into cameras before we're going in hunting, or if we're buying a rifle, and we spend a lot of money on those items. And those are items that maybe, like, as far as like your weapon you choose, you're only going to be using that for a few moments in the hunt to actually harvest the animal. And you want it to perform to the best of the ability, but you're going to be wearing your apparel every single day. And so investing in a system that's going to last you a long time, that's just not a throwaway item, actually investing in something that's going to make you comfortable so that when you're actually out hunting, you're having a good experience and you can concentrate on doing what you're doing is investing in that system to give you a good experience.
And you said it, dude, quality over throwaway. And that's what I think. I mean, let's face it. Most of us grew up wearing throwaway camo. And at least when I started hunting 30 years ago, there really wasn't many options. So the quality was terrible, but that's what I always notice. You buy a quality product now, pretty much for every product we use in the hunting world is all, I wouldn't say the most expensive, but it's, you pay for what you get, and we use quality stuff. So it's generally at the higher end of the market. But the one thing that's always challenging, especially with hunting clothing, is being able to find a location to try things on. And over the years, that's been one of the kind of difficult parts. But the cool part, I think one of the things you guys have going for you above anybody else is you have a huge distribution. You guys are everywhere. So it's very easy for somebody, no matter where you live, even in little Southeast Iowa, Shields has an absolutely awesome department with all kinds of Sitka stuff. So to be able to go in there, try stuff on, try several layers over top of one another, it'll save you some shipping costs probably and having to ship stuff back and forth. But absolutely, and the other part is it's not a fashion contest. When you're up in a tree stand and you're cold,
what?
To have a little bit.
I thought it was.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have hair like you, Jason.
Strutting around in the tree stand.
Yeah, I have to kill big bucks and stuff to get some attention. But I have never cared about looking the coolest. I care about the performance. So if I'm warm and cozy, I enjoy hunting so much more, and it's just more enjoyable. There's nothing worse than knowing beforehand that you're going to freeze and be in a lot of pain, on a hunt. That sucks, dude. That's not fun. And I'll tell you, that's the fastest way to lose interest if you have somebody that you're trying to get into hunting, whether you have a wife or a fiance, or if that's a female that's trying to get her boyfriend into hunting or whatever. Like when I brought my wife Katie out hunting for the first few times, she was wearing junk stuff that was all hand-me-down, and she hated it. And now with just a few improvements with a quality pair of boots and now some Sitka outerwear, she'll be nice and warm and cozy, and that will make her want to go on the next hunt, because there's just nothing worse than getting cold. It sucks.
Absolutely. And it's a good thing we're on a podcast, since we don't have the face for TV, right? So
that's right. Yeah. What do you mean, man? I look like Fabio most of the time.
Well, Chris, I know you didn't want to make this about Sitka, and we've done our best to not make it about Sitka, but you sent us some stuff. Well, you didn't send us some stuff. I mean, you treated us really, really, really good, and we definitely appreciate that. Is it okay with you to talk about what you guys have coming up? Because I'm really excited about.
Dude, I want to mention a few things, dude. It's like the best features I've ever seen in a pair of pants in my entire life. Okay, the Stratus pants have a reverse barn door, and I don't understand why you are the first people to do it right.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, take me through what you're described to me.
Okay, on the front of the pants, your typical zipper for a guy, how you get your pants on and off and to relieve yourself. the zipper usually goes from the top to bottom. On theirs, it goes from the bottom to the top. So it's engineered the opposite, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and part of the reason we do that is the fit for roost you're talking about is we've all been in a tree stand. That's why we have a Gatorade bottle there. But you're wearing a harness and a lot of stuff going across your waist, and just thinking of the finer details that our product developers, we spend a lot of time, even the snaps on the side of the Stratus pant, for example. I don't know if you used them, but they're not a normal snap.
They're rubber, brother.
There's a silent snap. Yeah, they're silent snaps, so they're not going to make noise when you're using them. We typically try to pay attention on what you're using, and then also there's some suspender straps. Sometimes, like you talked about, carrying a lot of weight in your cargo pockets. There's a spot to attach your suspenders. So we do try to pay attention, and to, depending on how you use it, everybody, the way you guys approach hunting, each of you does it differently, and you'll do it in a different way than I do, but that you can customize that piece to make it work for the way you approach the hunt.
And just real quickly on pants, the one other thing I noticed on the Stratus pants, the inside of the waistband, you have like a rubber material that's I think screen printed on, or whatever. It's attached to the fabric. So essentially, your inner shirt, your inner layer won't slide up, and you won't have air gaps. So like that, I looked at it immediately and was like, nothing will slide and slip. And when you're packing a bunch of stuff, typically with all the weight on your waistband, that's always an issue. So that will help keep everything nice and organized in the back of your pants. Keep your shirts from coming up. The barn, the front zipper is killer. I can't tell you. I also made the same note about the rubber quiet snaps, because there's nothing worse than the sound of a button snap tink. And then also having the top metal piece, because a lot of my clothing in the past have had on the buttons, you have a top metal piece that's exposed. And so you hit your bow cam on it or click anything metal against it, and it makes an audible metal tink. And as any of us whitetail guys know, a whitetail can hear that like anything. So, Jason, what were some of the features you dug on some of the samples you got?
Well, first and foremost, I'm just about 6'5", and I don't know, Chris, you could probably speak to this point better than what I could in terms of if anyone competes with you in that market or in that space, but you're the only people that I'm aware of that went through the trouble of offering something in a tall. Almost everything that you have is offered with respect to pants, and I believe in a lot of cases a top garment is offered in a tall. And so for me to have the ability, first of all, to cover all of my legs rather than 6 inches above my ankle or 4 inches or whatever the case may be. A 32-inch inseam just isn't cutting it for this guy. And let's be honest, I want to look good when I'm out there too. No, I'm just kidding. So that's a big deal to me. So obviously, I noticed that in the last couple of years as I've been slowly trying to build up my my stock of your clothes. I would always look to see what was tall, but some of the little things, just the littlest tiny things, like that I noticed. You didn't send us the gloves that I have, but you sent us gloves similar to it, and they're meant for a little bit cooler weather, and just like I think it's on the inside above your palm, right where someone would like take your pulse, if you will. You put a little piece of leather, or maybe it's not leather, but it's something that has a little bit of stick to it, and you can pull it on. And it's a lot of those little tiny things that you guys do that I don't see in any of the clothes that I have laying around here that make a big difference. And then, of course, the rubber zippers, and I don't know, it's fit and finish, man. I'm in the car business, as a lot of folks that are listening know. So fit and finish is a phrase that's not, it's not foreign to me whatsoever. The fit and finish of all of your garments is great, and I don't think that there's been a detail that's really been overlooked. I'm hesitantly going to say this. I would.
It's like the Ferrari, dude.
Yeah, but like getting the stuff is almost an experience. Like, I don't know if any of you guys are into workout clothes or not, and if any of our listeners have ever bought anything from Lululemon. Yes, they make guy stuff, but when you get a package from them, first of all, it's from them. The branding is cool, and they do a great job, and they also pay attention to the small details. But when I got your box, and I opened it up, and it was all brown on the outside like a normal box would be, and you open it up, and it struck me, turning clothing into gear, I believe is the catchphrase. Just right there, I was impressed with the small attention to detail that you guys had. The entire inside of the box was white, and you pull the stuff out, and it's just, I don't know, it's
like an experience.
It is an experience, and
yeah.
Like it, some people may not be into that, and that's perfectly fine. For me, I am into it, just because I guess I've learned to appreciate those small, fine details because I've been in the retail industry for so long. But getting past that, all the things that are pertinent to the whitetail world are all those little things that I said. The small, whether it's like Todd said, the band of whatever it is on the inside that keeps your waistband or whatever's tucked into your waistband tight, and the rubberized snaps.
Dude, I'm assuming on the Fanatic hoodie, those pockets at the end, are those hand warmer pockets?
Yeah, they're a flip mitt at the end of your fingers, so they can act as concealment. But it basically allows you to be able to use your thumb, but it's a flip mitt over, and then there's a face mask for concealment that comes up, so you can basically go into ninja state if you want to.
That's right.
When you're out there.
I felt like a ninja because I put it on and I went upstairs and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. It's got a hood on it. And then I'm like, wow, this is even cooler. It flips over on the end of your fingers. And then I'm like, whoa, wait, there's a little thumb, a little thumb thing. For me, that's a big deal because everything is short in my arms. Well, it keeps it pulled down, right?
Oh, dude, I just found the ninja deal.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Okay, I didn't even see that.
We
I was
made one
talking
in
just
black, too.
Like at the end of your fingers. Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. I'm a hoodie guy, and I'm telling you guys, like the other secret, if you don't wear hoodies, you're nuts because it helps you keep so much warmer than just wearing a knit cap with a gaiter even. That hood is just another layer of insulation toward the end of your hunt where you're just getting a little bit cooler. You throw that on, your head heats up immediately, and it will push you through another segment of hunting, so to speak. But especially if it's raining, things like that. So the hoodie, dude, that Fanatic hoodie is killer. It's the perfect weight, and I can see myself using that throughout the season, regardless of what temperature it is, and just layering accordingly with it.
And it's got
we also make it in black. So for blind hunters, if you're in a blind, you can wear it in that situation. One thing too, I wanted to talk about, like what you were talking about talls, we do try and offer, and this is also new for this year. We've started offering a full system, so you can actually get shirts in a tall and some specific styles. So now you can build a system with the core lightweight long sleeve shirt and a tall. So you're talking about having not that come all the way up on your sleeves. Then you can put your Stratus jacket on there, and that's available in a tall. So now you can get your bibs, your pants, but then now also tops and a tall. And then also our gloves are all going to a double extra large size as well too.
Well, let's talk about if you could. I mean, I don't want to. We could go if you let Todd and I go. rabbit trail off 100 different directions.
I know. I could talk about zippers for a half an hour. I'll be honest with you.
Right.
Me too.
and okay, well, we'll save that for another podcast. Tell us.
We'll call that one the Zipper Show.
Right. That'll probably get a lot of downloads.
I could fill in an hour, I promise you. So.
Yeah, I bet. Tell us about. I'm particularly interested to hear about what's new. I know what's new because I think you told me about it or told us about it at the ATA show. But what's new with respect to the early season whitetail line, the ESW?
Yeah, that was so that's new this year. One of the bigger gaps in the line is, there was a lot of Sitka gear that was developed for later in the season, and we really had listened to a lot of people coming back and hunters asking for a system that was designed for early season. So there's now the ESW shirt, hat, pants, and glove to all be added into your early season system. The shirt, I know you guys both have one there, but it's ultra lightweight. It has mesh panels where you're going to need those. It's pretty form-fitting around the forearm, but the textile that we're using is super stretchy, so it's not going to be a lot of archery hunting's going along that time of year. And so we really wanted to have a shirt that made sure that there's going to be nothing to interfere with bowstring clearance, and also optimizing coverage for just insect and sun protection too as well. So you'll see the collar on that shirt is built up with kind of a short collar that you can button up, and then you can also vent it with using the silent snaps as well.
And Chris, that's the ESW.
That's the ESW, and those snaps are not actually rubber. I know you guys do a lot with Ozonics, for example, but they're silicone, and so that's a key difference. Differences with ozone, you don't want to put a natural compound inside of there. So we've made sure that as we engineer new products, that everything can be used. If somebody decides to use an ozone bag, like I know Ozonics has one coming out, that you can use that product inside of there.
That's a major consideration too, because I have a lot of ruined old hunting clothing that used standard elastic in a lot of different areas, and now ozone has become an absolute monster within scent control for good reason. It actually works. It works very, very well, and so that's become a major consideration, I think, with a lot of guys.
Yeah, and if you have, like we used to have some natural rubber in some of our shoulder straps. If you've got one of those and you accidentally put it in an ozone chamber, our customer service team is great. Call, even if you, like you said, you were shopping at Shields, for example, or if you had questions you can call our customer service team, and they'll answer any questions that you have. And then if you're looking for any help, they can guide you that. So when you go into your retailer, you can find the right product for yourself to make sure that you have the best experience. We don't mind getting on the phone a lot. Some companies don't want to spend time on the phone, but you can actually call our customer service team, and everybody in that room hunts, every single person.
That's always nice, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing nicer than calling a customer service department that actually is doing the same things that you are, so they can actually understand what it is that you're talking about, or what it is your issue is. So you sent us the pants, which I love, the early season whitetail pants. You've got the button down. I'm going to call it a jacket, but it's really a shirt, right?
Yes.
And then, so is that going to be your base layer, or would you still recommend what would you recommend? How would we go about using that? How am I going to use that?
If you're going to wear the ESW, I would just wear that next to skin. That time of year and what you're using, that's fine to wear. If it's going to get a little cooler and you want to put something under it, you could potentially layer like a core lightweight under there or a core midweight and get a little bit extra out of that. But a lot of times what you're going to do is that's going to be specifically designed for early season. So you don't need to wear anything under it, especially when it's 90 degrees outside or 85 degrees outside and you're in the sun. You're really going to want to promote ventilation. And then later on, maybe like adding like a Fanatic, for example, hoodie. That's the way you go. That system that you're holding there, the ESW, is designed specifically for early season conditions.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, just looking at Sitka as a brand, is I know a lot of guys who wear it. One of my good buddies, Tyler Tissue, is one of your ambassadors, and he's had nothing but good things to say. But I honestly don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything negative about the brand after using it. So that's saying a lot in itself.
There's no question that it's quality. It's the Cadillac Mercedes of clothes, but more important than any of that, it works. It works when it's cold. It works when it's warm. I've had really good luck with it. I have to ask this just because of the retail guy in me. How often do you guys deal with a price objection?
I think that's a concern that a lot of people have. I mean, that's where we get down to the investment. You're going to it's not for everyone. We don't design gear for everyone. We try and offer something, but we won't trade off on performance to just offer the cheapest thing available. Everything we try and put thought into everything that we do. And if you're willing to make the investment in it, we call it, you guys talked about, it's the aha. We call it the aha moment. You're like, oh, okay, now I get it. And that's where I think people, once they use it, they understand what you're really getting out of having good gear. Just like you would have good gear in your weapon of choice, or having a great, a tree stand that's going to be lightweight and keeping you mobile if you do the hang and hunt thing.
You can pretty much go down the list of all the products we use, whether it's the Lone Wolf or Ozonics or any of that, and pretty much in every case, people go, oh, gee, that seems like a lot of money. And all you have to do is get them to try it that first time, and once they do, they realize why it costs a little bit more. It's because the quality of materials and craftsmanship is 3 times what the other guys are, and that's why theirs is so much cheaper. But in this case, the one thing you got going for you is it's always got your back, right?
Chris, you see what I have to deal with? It's hard to keep this guy on track.
Hey, taglines are hard to come by, man. You got to start writing some of this stuff down, Chris.
That's a great one.
Yeah. That's probably going to be on the inside cover next year.
Of course. With your name.
Right, exactly. So the reason that I wanted to ask it is I see it on whether it's people on an online forum talking about it or whatever, and someone was just on it was the Hunting Beast forum on Facebook the other day, and they're like, well, what should I get? Should I get First Light? Should I get this? Should I get that? Sitka? And so many people. It seems like they're really starting to get it, that it's an investment. How many times, Todd, do you think in the last 30 years that we've been hunting that you find yourself in Farm and Fleet or Shields or whatever the store is every year buying new camouflage in the hopes that that camouflage, or not necessarily the camo itself or the pattern itself, but that particular garment is going to finally keep you warm?
Oh, well, it's that, plus just, I tell you, no matter what business you're in, that's what I've learned in the different companies that we've built, is everybody likes something different. And I think that's probably the greatest thing about Sitka, is you guys have such a vast product line in all these different categories that you've got something for everybody, whether you live in northern Saskatchewan or hunting in the Bahamas. which, by the way, if anybody is hunting in the Bahamas, I would appreciate some invitations. But you guys have such a broad product line that literally it's like you're going to find something, start with something small, see how you like it, and then go from there. And that's the best way to build your arsenal, whether it's with tree stands, arrows, or, I mean, you can go right down the list. But yeah, your equipment is definitely one of the biggest factors in your hunting. I mean, it's the only thing that keeps you between getting busted, getting cold, and that animal that you're going after, man.
Chris, how is the elevated 2 pattern? How has that been received?
Very well. So one of the other approaches we take is we don't use mimicry. So OptiFade is really taking a scientific approach on how the ungulate sees, or if it's in the waterfowl case, how waterfowl see. So we look at engagement distances, and then we also utilize how that animal sees. And so in the elevated environment, you're up in a tree stand, 20, 25 feet, and then the optimal range is 80 yards and below, whereas like subalpine or open country are maybe developed from ungulate vision based at ground level at different engagement distances. So subalpine, for example, is optimized for engagement distances of 50 yards and less, and how the ungulate sees in vegetated environments where open country is how an ungulate sees in the open terrains, and then the engagement distances are further away. And then the way that we take OptiFade's approach to waterfowl, for example, it's how that bird sees from an elevated environment, the reverse of where the ungulate sees. And all of that's done through an algorithm. So we had partnered with a company called HyperStealth and a guy named Guy Kramer, who developed patterns using basically people that had done deer studies for the insurance industry on how deer see, obviously with cars. And we merged those all together, and that's how OptiFade was born. So it's the key is like you might look at it and go, wow, that's like a lot of white. That's for snow. No, that's not the case. It's actually built for the fit for use application. You'll never say a big game piece or a waterfowl piece with those patterns on, because they're not that OptiFade pattern is not built for that end use, and you'll never see it on a car seat. Like you'll never see a truck wrapped and elevated, because that doesn't make sense.
True.
But no, you're exactly right. That contrast is absolutely critical for tree stand hunting. And if you look up in the timber anytime during the season, it's certainly not what a lot of these other camo patterns look like. They might look cool hanging on the shelf or whatever, but really the only thing I care about is the ability to fool a whitetail, and I cannot wait to put this to the test.
We're glad you guys were able to use it, and hopefully, with what we're doing, I'm sure people will have a better experience in the woods. That's all what we want to do. It's great to go out there, but if you're not having a good time, what's the point? So,
yeah, absolutely, and there's no, I cannot see any objection coming up to any of what I've seen so far. So, and again, we're not in bed with Sitka in any way, shape, or form. Let's be transparent about that. I just simply reached out to you because I thought that people understanding that there is a science behind layering your clothes, there is a science behind that, and behind keeping warm. And I thought, who better to ask than you? And we had a nice chat at the ATA show, so I thought I'd reach out to you, and this worked out perfect. So, and I can't complain about any of the stuff that I've worn. Chris, I'll obviously edit some of this stuff, but is there anything else that you'd like to cover?
I would just recap for people when it comes to it, just make sure you're wearing that lightweight base layer to move moisture, and then adding your insulation. So don't put fleece directly against skin. Don't use cotton. And when you're layering, just keep it light for the commute, and then later when you get to your stand, I think you'll, regardless of what you use, whether it be Sitka or anything else, if you take these approaches, you're going to have a better experience. And ultimately, that's what we want for everybody that's out there hunting.
Well, there you have it, our interview with Mr. Chris Derrick from Sitka Gear. Chris, again, is the product manager, the whitetail product manager from Sitka Gear. I met Chris while we were at the ATA show, and he had some knowledge of white knuckle and is a whitetail hunter himself, and just reached out to him after we got a few emails about how Todd layers, or I layer, or a couple of our other folks layer during the coldest times of the year that we hunt. And I thought we would be best served by getting someone who's in that business, in that space. Again, we're not technically sponsored by Sitka in any way, shape, or form, other than that they wanted to come on our podcast and tell us what they knew in an effort to make your hunt just a little bit more enjoyable. So we hope you found some value in that. Certainly, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to go to Sitka Gear's website, or you can call their customer service department. Todd and I both got the early season whitetail. I believe it's going to be coming out here in the next 3 weeks. The early season whitetail line is going to be exactly what you need if you hunt in North Dakota, South Dakota, anywhere in the Midwest in those early seasons, Kentucky. It's going to be a game changer because it's so thin, but so durable and so breathable. It's perfect. So. With that, I'll start to close out the show today. I want to remind everyone that our partner in this whole deal in the podcast, Ozonics, is now factory ship direct. They're going to be able to offer you deals that they haven't been able to offer you before. Right now, I'm working with their marketing company or their marketing department on getting a bundle for the white knuckle family, if you will. Anyone who's a loyal listener of the White Knuckle podcast or the White Knuckle web show will be able to take part in this special deal that they're going to give us. It'll be a bundle of products together for one low price. So pay attention in the coming months. If after you listen to this, you can go to www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP and look at the deal that we have this month. And you can take that deal. If there's a new deal up, go ahead and take that deal. For that, that's it for this week. Jason out.